Hello there and welcome to the bedroom of the dollhouse for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Joost Elfers for April 15th, the day of human definition. That's right, and here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of human definition. We have what appears to be, what could it be? Oh, it looks to be some kind of demonstration gyroscope against, I don't know, some kind of model of the moon or the sun. Or it could be like an armillary sphere, like a dual type. Who's to say? I think that's pronounced right. In any event, does that speak to the day of human definition? I don't know. I can't make heads or tails as to why they threw that in there. But oftentimes, these things come off rather enigmatic, all right? Sometimes we can make a connotation, oftentimes not. But by and large, I just want you to be part of the dynamic going on off camera. That said, not altogether all too important. Not when it's April 15th. And it's somebody's birthday. No, what's important around these here parts? Wishing you a happy birthday. So if it's your birthday, hey, happy birthday. But if this finds you late, well, I hope you had a happy birthday in that circumstance. That said, a lot of times we have folks who drop in, want to learn more about the folks born on the day. And if that's the case, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I dive in with the redirect, something I like to do around these here parts, and that's roll some dice. That's right. It says the Diecast birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake. But if you've been here before or you just want to get to the redirect, well, hey, skip ahead in the chapters. I'll just be here rolling dice because I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And here I rolled us a 1 and a 2 for a 3. All right. Now, what is synchronicity? Some of you may be wondering. Well, my friends, as I hear it told, a lot of times folks, as they're pressing on through life, they're very narrow or singular of focus. They often have the blinders up to what's going on around them or what might cross their path. Now, they're just focused on running the errands or getting through everyday life. But as I hear it told, the universe or the higher powers that be is often apt to put things in our path to help us manifest our goals or realize our aspirations. But if we're missing those things because we're too focused on what's down the road, hey, we're not being helped, right? So this is a little bit of an examination or experiment to help you start identifying such things. And how do you do that? Well, you need some kind of mutually agreed upon sign between you and the universe to help you see such things. What could that be? Boom, your daily numbers. Now, you don't have to go with what I rolled for you. The intention is there, but if you want to try this out for yourself, it'd probably behoove of you to get a pair of dice. And then you can ascribe directional values to number sets, say 1 through 3 north, 4 through 6 east, and so on. You can even get into the nitty-gritty, like evens and odds for yeses and nos, or lefts and rights, all right? And then you set time limits with numbers you roll there too. Ostensibly the time to which to go in that direction, all right? And once you get all that figured out, hey, you pick yourself out a place near and dear to your heart or someplace you want to explore, and you set out. But that said, outside of looking for your daily numbers, your 1 and your 3, or your 21, your 12, or your 3, hey, you want to keep your eyes open and your mind right, because you never know. There might be stuff that crosses your path that forms a little bit of a theme. Who's to say? Take the armillary disc there. Maybe you start seeing such gyroscope type objects out in the wild. And it doesn't necessarily need to be the real thing. It could be the image of as much on, say, the side of a bus on an advertisement or a billboard or some kid playing with a top, things like that, all right? Not to say it's going to be that, but it could be anything, so you got to be eagle-eyed. That said, maybe you reach the end of your first time limit directional value. You're not seeing much of anything. Hey, you know what? Never fear. Just take some time. Rest yourself. Look around. See what you see. Maybe you don't see much of anything. Just get going again, all right? Roll yourself some dice. Hey, maybe no sooner you do that, somebody stops and asks you what you're doing. And you know what? Just tell them what's going on. Put it on me, all right? Now this crazy guy on the internet said I should get out and let the universe shake up my life. It's my birthday, so I thought I'd give it a try. Folks are apt to tell you that's kind of crazy, and you'd say, I know you'll say you agree, but they'll say, well, that's not what's crazy about it, despite that being kind of nuts. What's crazy is it's my birthday too. Oh, that could be what happens, all right? The universe was setting you up to meet somebody, all right? Will it be that on the nose? Maybe not, but you never know. Maybe you run into someone from high school or something and you get to catch up and they join you on the journey, which is great because, as I hear it told also, the more people who are focused on the same results, you're apt to beget greater results, all right? A kind of consensus reality type thing. But that's getting into the weeds. I think you get the idea. So if you get out there, see, taste, touch, smell, or even intuit just a little bit of that kind of magic, or what I like to call magic, you'll understand why I brought it up. Put it in your world there. So that said, I think you get the idea. Let's get on with the birthday read, all right? Your month is April. Your day is the 15th. Your sign is 24 to 26 degrees Aries of the Aries III period specifically. And your quality and element is Cardinal fire. All right, here we go. April 15th, the day of human definition. Realistic to the extreme. April 15 people are definers of life as they see it. It is the human condition which interests them and which they must measure, describe, and delineate in everything they do. On everyday level, April 15 people are busy structuring, giving shape to the needs of family and friends. Those born on this day are involved with what others are eating, wearing, thinking, and doing. Often they become over-involved, and this is where the trouble starts. All right, those close to April 15 people can come to resent this close observation and begin to hanker for both privacy and independence. And if April 15 people go one step further and begin to impose their moral judgments as well, they will certainly face resistance. However, for more dependent personalities that need the guidance of a strong hand, April 15th people will fill a necessary role. The inspirational qualities of April 15th people can indeed be great. Thus, those who are touched by their brilliance may come to worship them, becoming passive in their presence and receptive to their wishes. Unfortunately, the less highly evolved April 15th person may have little to no interest in the welfare of others. Therefore, in instituting personal moral beliefs, he or she may act as the role of a petty dictator. It is a challenge to April 15th people to define clearly their relationship with those around them and to be able to back off, both leaving others free to choose for themselves and situations to go as they will. For example, sometimes an enterprise or endeavor which has not been going well is better left to dissolve. And if the April 15th person tries to hold it together out of ideological stubbornness, he or she may be doing everyone a great disservice. Openness and acceptance are important lessons for the April 15th person to learn. Those born on this day are remarkably adept at planning and founding new structures, organizations, or institutions. Generally, it is best, however, that they relinquish command of them and thus be free to move on to new pursuits. Alas, their talents for maintenance may tie them to their creations, resulting in repetitious existence in which they are unable to grow. And April 15th people should beware of apprehending their environment too literally. Their bent is so practical, efficient, and down to earth that they may fail to fathom direct expressions of the human heart. And April 15th people sometimes neglect youthful fancy in themselves by demanding an adult approach to all things. And in their definition of what is human, they should consider embryonic, childlike, and irrational aspects of humankind as well as the more mature ones. Also, it is important for them to remember the value of humor, of playing the fool once in a while, and not taking themselves too seriously. All right. Very interesting birthday reading today, all right? It definitely bucks with the tradition for the Aries period on the whole. That said, most of the days do, but there are a lot of underlying themes that surprisingly pervade the period. So I might be burning things down when I say all that. I like to provide a little bit of a commentary on what we just read. make associations, connections, and the like with what we just read. The period on the whole, the period more specifically the Aries III and how that relates to other things as well, but also just what I found interesting. So let's dive into it. Here we go. April 15th, the day of human definition. You're said to be realistic to the extreme, and you define life as you see it through the prism of your interest in the human condition. And an oddly specific quality for the book, to be sure. All right, which only arises in spits and spatters to the best of my memory. So this is a pretty unique day. That's what I'm trying to say here. That said, the reading claims this is further realized in your involvement with family and friends, but perhaps to a fault. All right, that is, if you overreach with it. All right. This quality more than likely is owed in no small part to the Aries III period, where concerns for others and society is much more in focus than previous Aries periods, where self-concern was much more the intrinsic aim, if you like. The last period, Aries II, they were considered the star. Aries III people are considered the pioneers, all right? So where are we at here? Interestingly enough, I wouldn't have thought this would translate to being over-involved. So I was a little surprised by that. This characteristic may be more specific to the day for reasons that we'll get to here shortly, but it seems a bit more of an anomaly for Aries on the whole, to be over-involved. Most of those folks, especially early period Aries people, much more self-involved, and not in necessarily negative terms. A lot of times they would get friends and people would gravitate towards them. It's just not something they were overly interested in. They would much rather be focused on their own pursuits, and then because they flourish within those particular dynamics. Doesn't mean they poo-pooed the notion. It just wasn't a overwhelming focus of theirs. So the suggestion to read the room and kind of flavor to taste those particular aspects, I think that's a very apt suggestion considering your particular dynamic if you're overreaching or coming off overbearing. That said, the reading claims that when it works to the extent that others find you inspirational and they might just worship you, all right? But for the lesser evolved, that may translate to a dictatorial, self-interested dynamic existing. So that bucks with what has been said here, that you're somebody who isn't necessarily self-involved. So you want to watch out for that. Don't become lesser evolved there, which is a bit of a surprising, turn considering everything previously mentioned. But again, not necessarily on the Aries whole. Unless it's in a less pretentious or a more pretentious kind of way. Because like I said, those folks that didn't come off that way. They just weren't necessarily too interested in it. Their self-involvement wasn't in a negative kind of respect, whereas maybe this one is if you lean lesser evolved. So mind you don't get in that particular pitfall. That said, even though self-interest was present with the previous period, as I mentioned, it was much more benign, if not benevolent. So quite different despite sounding similar. So I'm glad the reading mentioned this, but I can definitely see how this all may translate to finding it challenging to define relationships as well. Almost as though you may be trying too hard to make things work. Though I don't think I would have considered such a dynamic going into this read, being as what was stated early on. So a bit surprising in that respect. So again, something else I'm glad that they mentioned. But all that being said, the reading claims that you're a down-to-earth, practical individual, which may come with certain difficulties also, all right? Apprehension of people's more childlike natures, it sounds like. Humor being some of them, apparently. So, be open to that, they said. But the recommendation to not take yourself too seriously, pretty common when this particular aspect comes up. So they're kind of telling you to lean the other way, all right? So contrast that particular strength or weakness, if you like. That said, that's what I had to say about the breakdown. Let's move on to your numbers and your planets. All right, let me get the book centered on camera, so stay in frame. I've been messing that up all week. So no sooner do I line myself and say as much, I start leaning this way. All right, let's see if I can prevent that. All right, those born on the 15th of the month are ruled by the number 6, as 1 + 5 = 6, and by the planet Venus. All right, those ruled by the number 6 tend to be charismatic and sometimes even inspire worship. And the theme of sexual magnetism may figure heavily into the lives of those born on this day because of the combined influences of Venus and Mars, the ruler of Aries. Sometimes April 15 people provoke the very irrational tendencies in which others may have, or in others rather, which they have repressed in themselves. And since Venus indicates a desire for harmony, April 15th people may be confused when things don't fall into place as planned. Part of this challenge here involves bringing Venus from number 6 and Mars from Aries influence into balance, so that masculine and feminine, active and receptive, can both be accepted and expressed in an easy manner. All right, there's your numbers and planets. Highly personalized entry today. Not always the case. Sometimes it's kind of boilerplate, and they might inject or button something in there, but not today. I think they doubled down on it pretty well. So let's get into what I have to say here before I burn things down further. The number 6 in the planet Venus for a desire for harmony, charisma, and a purported ability to provoke irrational tendencies in others that you've repressed in yourself. However that's done, whatever that means, all right? But perhaps most notably, a heavy sexual magnetism, all right? Which hasn't been mentioned in the past few number 6 Venus days, barring the mention of love and romance. So maybe it's ideal we're here in the bedroom of the dollhouse as we get down into this one here today. I don't know how or why, but when sexual magnetism is mentioned, we're oftentimes in the bedroom. Not something I plan, not at all, all right? It just happens with the rotation somehow. Synchronistically speaking, perhaps, all right? Now, why that's mentioned here for you, but romance and love isn't anyone's guess. I couldn't tell you. But I would contend some may argue this feminine Venus love energy may be the primary reason that I previously mentioned in the breakdown notes why this penchant for being over-involved may exist, all right? A nurturing kind of push, perhaps, with the feminine energy brought in by Venus. Who's to say? That would be my guess, though. That's why I mentioned that. But the co-rulership apparently provides a balance of dynamics, which may not be so easy for others. But I like this mention of confusion when things don't go as planned, when they're kind of out of harmony, if you like, which it says you gravitate towards. And that wasn't something I would have considered going into this myself. So, like I said, very personalized entry, very interesting. I like that they brought in certain elements that they did, and I also like that it happened in a dollhouse. I can't help but love when that happens. It doesn't happen all the time, though. That said, that's been your numbers and your planets. Let's move on to your tarot. That's right, one of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies. But hey, it's here in the book. We don't have to take it home with us and deal out the cards and let it predict our future, however it's used. But oftentimes it kind of serves as an example with which to consider these things, metaphor, if you like, for what we've gone over so far. Other times it almost seems like it informs the breakdown. And this isn't something they pick. This is, again, another rotational thing. It only falls on certain days. So it's really interesting when it lines up. Let's see if it does. Here we go. The 15th card of the major arcana is the Devil, all right? Indicating a fear-desire dynamic working where sexual attraction, irrationality, and passion are concerned. The Devil holds us slave through our need for security and money, and he represents our base nature grasping for security. He controls us through the irreconcilable differences which exist in our male-female selves. And the positive sides of this card is sexual attraction and the expression of passionate desires. But the card reminds us that although we are bound to our bodies, our spirits are free to soar. All right. Total copy-paste job with this one. Boilerplate as can be. Kind of unfortunate because sometimes they'll button it with a little bit of something, how this applies and the like, or why this is a great card, or how it serves as a reminder to, be mindful of something. None of that here for you today. Let's see if I can pick up the slack here a little bit, if any even exists, all right? Like I said, it can just kind of serve as a reminder for certain things. But here we go. The Devil, representing a fear-desire dynamic with sexual attraction, irrationality, and passion for a once-a-month card that isn't usually, usually it's the Lover's card on a number 6 day. because that's the number 6 card. And then this thing only goes up to like 17 or something, so they got to bring the rotation back. Devil only comes up once because there's only one 15 in the month, right? So all the more interesting in that for all of the other anomalies present today, that would be one as well, all right? And that concern for the intrinsic conflict is ostensibly baked in also, with the Mars-Venus dynamic going in there. Cards don't usually line up to this extent, especially considering the copy is boilerplate. And also considering this hasn't been personalized at all. I'm surprised it didn't make mention of anything. But the mention of grasping for security and irreconcilable differences only further cinches this, I would say, is kind of a hallmark card for you, especially for the day. Like you could pick out some other one and see if it lines up, and it wouldn't necessarily. In terms of like, you look at a horoscope in a newspaper and you could pick out any one of them, and it would seem to apply. I think this particular card lines up very nicely for you. Not to say some others might not as well, but I don't know. I'm not doing that examination. So that said, the Devil card. There you go. But that being said, that's been your tarot. Let's move on to your health. Here we go. Often because of intense matters at hand, April 15th people neglect their body's condition. This may come as a surprise to others who know April 15th people to be knowledgeable about health and concerned with keeping their life running smoothly. And it may also be the case that April 15th people know much more about health than they do about disease. And it sounds strange, but those born on this day should perhaps, at times, give in to minor illnesses, to the periodic need for their body to readjust or even break down, without becoming frantic about immediately getting well. April 15th people should beware of fanatic approaches to fitness and and since their appetites are usually good, they would do well to eat a highly varied diet. All right, a little bit stymied there. I lost my place for a moment. Apologies. That said, I had to write some of this in the book, so I'm going to be in and out here. But let's dive into what I do have on a notepad. You're said to neglect your body despite being knowledgeable about health. And this often comes up due to similar people being more concerned for others than themselves. But that wasn't what was mentioned here for you, all right? Imagine my surprise that wasn't mentioned. And the idea of letting an illness run its course was mentioned instead of frenetically trying to get well. I don't think this has ever come up in the book before, so that's very interesting, and it must have applied to a large number of people that they interviewed for this day, because that's an anomaly I haven't seen before. Like I said, I would have thought it was you cared for other people more than yourselves. That comes up more often than you might think, specifically when that particular dynamic is mentioned on the onset. That said, I'd imagine this may be due to corresponding stress or maybe just building an immunity for such things. They're trying to recommend that you do that, because if you're trying to rush to get healthy, maybe you're not allowing your body to build up certain resistances. Not quite sure why that's mentioned, but like I said, it must apply if they made mention of it. Like I said, it's the only time I recall this being in the book. But beware going overboard with fitness, they said, okay? Seems to track with Aries, quite honestly. But they get their activities in quite just being the go-getters that they are. Typically a Mars day, they say, get yourself some vigorous or strenuous exercise, ostensibly to excise the god of warlike energy or their adventuresome ambition. But Aries has been making a point not to do that, because they get their exercise just doing what they do naturally. All right. What else do I have here? They said varied diet, which is interesting. Seldom mentioned this period, and health entries have been an anomaly. All right. Normally they'll say what kind of exercise to get and what kind of diet to partake in, and sometimes it gets down to the very foods to eat. And Aries hasn't been doing that very much. So you did actually get some suggestions here. A healthy, highly varied diet. But a lot of the days previous, they didn't even get that much. So that said, Aries body areas of the head, neck, the brain. So make sure that you are taking care of such things with chiropractic, Even mention of tooth decay came up, ostensibly because it's in the head area. So mind that. But again, that's only come up once in the health entries here for Aries. So another bit of an anomaly. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned it there for you. That said, that's been your health. Let's move on to some advice. All right. Not that you haven't got a bunch of it already. All right, here we go. Learn to be more open and accepting. All right. Watch children and learn from them. Irrationality is not always to be feared. Okay. And express yourself without fear of rejection or looking foolish. Have some fun. All right. There we go with the advice. Quick in and out, it sounds like. But I would say they kind of addressed things that came up in the breakdown. Past few days, another anomaly. They've been bringing up things that I couldn't make hide nor hair of why it got brought up. If it was there, it was buried somewhere in between the lines or alluded to. But again, here in the book, so bear with me if I'm all over the place. They said, learn to be more open and accepting. I'd say effort not to run the room, or run the room when there are folks who don't want to be led or handled. Okay, tricky prospects, somewhat common advice in the book, but not for the period as it happens. Okay, so learn to read the room and see where that person who needs the inspiration is. For the other folks, you don't want to push them away by being over involved, if you like. Okay. They said, watch children and learn. Irrationality, not always to be feared. I wrote, they want you to be more open and have a childlike nature to kind of balance off your more down-to-earth, pragmatic, practical side, I would say. Common thing with the book here, they'll take one particular subset of qualities, and the advice is to kind of lean the other way. Kind of makes a little bit of sense there. Balance you out. Understand your self-nature, self-awareness. Mainline theme for the book, though, again, an anomaly. They haven't been mentioning it much. So Aries is kind of on its own program here, insofar as how the book's written anyhow. They said express yourself without fear of rejection, all right? I'm not sure if this is more of the same, maybe repressed nature previously mentioned, but maybe start small. Wear something ostentatious that makes you feel judged out there in the world, all right? Or at least somebody's watching you because you're wearing this weird shirt. I used to do that with this band shirt for the band Kiss. Like I always felt like people would be judging me for wearing it, so I made a point of wearing it out there until eventually I just didn't even pay it any mind. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. Maybe test that muscle. Wear some shoes with like a pink accent that you think looks ostentatious. Eventually you'll kind of get used to it, all right? That's the idea anyway. Hopefully you won't care anymore, and then you can extend that to other aspects of your life. Let's see here. And then they said have fun, all right? Let your hair down is what I wrote here. Have a laugh. Don't be too serious all the time, all right? It's just going to improve your mood, maybe take some of the stress down, open up that repression they said you had. Who's to say? Maybe there was some instance in life when you were early child and they locked you down, like you acted silly and you got reprimanded and it just set the course for you. Who's to say? Take it back, I would say. Reclaim your power. If you want to have fun, all right? It's okay to laugh. That's the idea. So in any event, that's been your advice. Let's move on to meditation. All right, I'm back and forth with the book today. Here we go. Getting out of the way and letting things happen is sometimes the very best thing you can do. Once more, getting out of the way and letting things happen is sometimes the very best thing you can do. All right. I like this one for you, though I'm not going to say why, all right? Your birthday, your meditation, don't want to influence it for you one way or the other, all right? That said, that's your meditation in the can. Let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. That's right. Let's see where you got the girth and where you're otherwise a little more atrophied in the bargain. Here we go. Let's see if we recognize them, picked up on any of them here. Your strengths says you're dominant, you're organized, and you're consequent. Consequent. I had to look this one up. All right, let's see what they added down here for the definition for consequent. Acting consistent with values, beliefs, and decisions. Relates to accountability, trust, and integrity. Hey, That's a good one. I like that one. I think it's the only time I've seen it in the book. All right. I can't remember ever seeing it before. Speaks to accountability and integrity. There you go. What's your weaknesses? How do we pick up on weaknesses? I don't know if we even picked up on consequent, but I'm going to run with it. All right. Like your weaknesses. You're judgmental. Oh, this is you're self-involved. Kind of picked up on that one a little bit. Period writ large kind of quality there. But you're also restricted. All right, I think we got some hints of that. You know, a lot of times I like to say our strengths are going to help us overcome our weaknesses, all right? But I also like to argue that our weaknesses can be strengths in unto themselves. So let's see if I can make a case here, all right? Your strengths, it says you're dominant, organized, and consequent. How can that help you overcome your weaknesses? I would say if you're dominant, think about it in terms of taking your personality and reflecting it back on yourself. You're going to dominate the situation. I need to improve myself on these weaknesses. You're going to hold yourself to task, I would say. Domineering way, okay? Organized, hey, you're going to set up everything that needs to be put in place to get the job done, all right? And consequent, all right, what do we got here? Relates to accountability, trust, and integrity. Hey, you're going to hold yourself to account. And integrity means you're going to do so. You know, you're going to hold yourself to account even if you're doing the wrong thing, all right? Hey, get on it, pal. You've been lazy, all right? Get back to it. But yeah, once again, acting consistent with values, beliefs, and decisions. You're going to be consistent in getting after improving on yourself, all right? That said, how can your weaknesses be strengths? You're judgmental, self-involved, and restricted, all right? Judgmental. You're going to find the things to nitpick, all right? That's huge in terms of a project that needs finished, especially if it's for some big client or just holding yourself to account again. I see why they could say it's a weakness, all right? Some folks are going to be turned off by it. And interestingly enough, a common thread, at least early Aries, is that they drum up antagonists. And these are some of the warmest people that you would ever meet, at least insofar as the book breaks them down. And it's almost as if that's why they arouse antagonism with folks, because they're too friendly. They garner too much attention and too many friends, even though they don't necessarily want or need them, all right? That's not an aim in their life. So jealousy might rue the day with some of those other folks. That said, judgmental, what's my point here? You may arouse some antagonism if you're too judgmental. So I can see where that would be a weakness. Self-involved, again, kind of a bad look, but I would say, I think that'd be the weakness side of it. But as to a strength, I would say that means you're going to get involved with the project and people can rely on you to be doing the right thing, even if it sets people off a little bit. Oh, you're off in your own corner, always doing your own thing. Yeah, but I'm getting the job done right, okay? That would be the strength in my mind. You know, flavor that to taste, pepper that where you will. That's kind of what it leads me to think. Insofar as restricted, how can that be a strength, even though it's listed as a weakness? I think it speaks to you being focused or set in your ways within a certain avenue. And so again, if you got a big project coming up, people can rely upon you to once again be consequent, be consistent, have that integrity, all right? Because you're within the confines of a certain avenue. So I think that's why it's a strength in my opinion. That said, did I make the best case? Who's to say? I think I did all right, but I think you get the idea, all right? So use your strengths to overcome your weaknesses, but I like to argue don't get rid of them altogether because they're part of what makes you special, right? All right. That said, that's been your strengths and your weaknesses. Let's move on to those. Oh, where's my transition? There it is. Let's move on to those born on this day. That's better. All right. So when we get into those born on this day, not only we get to see who shares your company, but something I like to do is use it as an opportunity to start reflecting upon chasing down our passions and what life's purpose, if you like. There's a lot of times I meet folks who don't have one. They just punch in the clock in the morning to roll out of bed and get to the job, keep the roof and over their head and the food on the table. And hey, you know what? My hat's off to them. You got to do that. But I think they should be living for themselves, not somebody else, all right? Especially if it's something they don't necessarily want to do, all right? It's kind of a humdrum kind of life when everybody should be able to live the life of their dreams, or at least aspire to do so. So I think this is the perfect opportunity not only see who shares your company, but what they did to get in the book. And maybe it'll plant the seed of inspiration for you to start thinking about what your passion is, what your purpose is, and how to do it. Because I think it takes work and time to figure those things out. So hopefully we can be here to inspire as much, all right? Because if there's anything I wish for someone on their birthday, it's that they're chasing a passion. They're doing literal or figurative backflips out of bed to get into it, all right? Because I think that's what it helps you do. That said, you already got that in your life? Well, hey, then the hat I'm not wearing once again is off to you again because I put it back on at some point. All right? We'll just see who shares your company. So let's get into it here. Those born on this day. All right, we start off strong with Leonardo da Vinci. All right? Supreme Renaissance man. All right? Painter, sculptor, architect, military engineer, inventor, and inventor. I listed all of them already. We also have Henry James, the novelist. One of his works is The Americans. We also have Bessie Smith, a jazz blues singer. Kim Il-sung, perhaps. It just looks like two eyes. All right. So North Korean dictator in power since 1945. Collected works fill 37 volumes. Prolific individual and definitely had an over-domineering personality, it sounds like. Who's to say? You know, sometimes there's some bad individuals mixed in there with the good. You never know. Lesser evolved, perhaps, if you like. Though I'm not saying that. Who's to say? That said, we're moving on. We have Nico Tinbergen, a Nobel Prize winning Dutch zoologist, animal behavior, it says, autistic child expert. We also have Claudia Cardinal, Italian film actress. Thomas Hart Benton, a modern realist painter. We also have Sir Neville Mariner, Marriner, Mariner, perhaps. British chamber conductor. St. Martin in the Fields, it says. Sir James Clark Ross, a British 19th century Antarctic explorer and a navigator as well in the bargain. Richard Davis, a jazz bassist. We also have Sir George A. Cadbury, British food manufacturer of Cadbury's chocolates. We also have Al Bloomingdale, department store owner. Harold Washington, the first African-American mayor of Chicago. Samantha Fox, a film TV actress. We also have Elizabeth Montgomery, a TV actress of Bewitched fame. Roy Clark, country western entertainer. Jeffrey Archer, Thatcher Troy Vice Party chairman, it says. Also a novelist of Cain and Abel, book there, I'm assuming. We have Jamie Paz Zamora, Bolivian president. Walter Huddleston, U.S. senator. And David Gill Hooley, a sculptor and ceramicist, it says. Now, I know I probably butchered a few names in there, so let me make up for it rather on my side of things. Not done in malice, it's just hooked on phonics doesn't necessarily work for me with the names there. But that said, I recognize a few names in there. As of late, they've been throwing in a whole smorgasbord of people I never heard hide nor hair of, all right? I never heard tell of. So I've been taking to telling folks, hey, the field of play is wide open for you to make your mark, all right? So start thinking about what you want to do with your life and the purpose you want to push after, not just that 9 to 5 clock punching, okay? So that said, that essentially rounds out your birthday reading, except to say your season is spring, your sign once again is Aries of the Aries III period specifically, your quality and element is Cardinal fire. What does that mean? That's another video altogether. I'll leave that up in the title cards there if you like. But that said, this has been April 15th, the day of human definition, all right? Definitely for the artists, I would say, that we saw born on this day. From The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Just Elfers. I have an affiliate link for this book down in the description right above a personal birthday message I like to put together for the birthday boys and girls. So check those out if you're interested. This makes an excellent coffee table book. You know what? Secret weapon if you're ever going to host a party, all right? Get that thing started off with an icebreaker, considering this thing's girth in literal terms. But you know what? It's going to get the conversation started for better or for worse. And people are going to leave the party at least remembering it for that respect. That said, book having been related, Not altogether all too important in the scheme of things. And what are the scheme of things? That's right, it's your birthday. So once again, you heard it here. Happy birthday. That's what's important here, all right? But for everybody else who joined us, hey, I hope you enjoyed yourselves, learned something. Maybe about that friend of yours, that loved one that you dropped in for. Hey, did it relate? Who's to say, all right? That said, I hope to see you for your birthday reading, all right? But once again, don't forget, boom, your daily numbers, a 1 and a 2 for a 3, 21, 12, whatever. Look for it, all right? You might find yourself in front of a building with that in the address. Hey, roll the dice, evens, odds. Should I go in, yes or no? Whatever is yes, it says yes. Hey, head on in there. What do you find? I don't know. Maybe it's one of them gyroscopes. All right, who's to say? That said, that's been your birthday. Don't let things, don't let yourself overreach with the folks there, you April 15ers. Just find your peace, okay? I would say, all right? Read the room if you like, okay? And have some fun. Learn to laugh if that's been repressed in your life, okay? You're going to be fine, I would say. All right, then. Once again, you heard it here. Happy birthday. Take care of yourselves.